Hello, everyone, and welcome to the event. It's obviously a very emotional event because it kind of concludes the work that we have been doing, and at least I have been doing for the last 2 years with RISCS. My name is Maria Bada. I'm a lecturer at Queen Mary University of London and a RISCS Fellow for the past 2 years. My research focuses on the human factor in cybersecurity and cybercrime. And I would like to start by saying a few words about the cybercrime research theme in the next slide. And this is the theme that my fellowship focused on. The kind of main aim is around understanding online harms, but also understanding the drivers and behaviors of those with malicious intentions, of the offenders, but also looking at the victim side and supporting victims. My fellowship focused not only on conducting research and on understanding the different aspects of the cybercrime research theme, but also it involved a lot of engagement with different stakeholders and participation in different events to communicate the findings and actually the results of the discussions that have been going on during my fellowship. So a couple of examples, my participation at the annual conference of the European Society of Criminology, Eurocrim, where I presented the results of the first year of my fellowship on online victimization, where I looked at the impact of online crime and the role or challenges that stakeholders such as the judiciary, law enforcement, or other authorities are actually dealing with when handling victims of such crime. The presentation, the slides of that, and the brief paper are available on RISC's website if you're interested on that topic. And earlier this year, I presented at the cybersecurity event of the British High Commission in Pretoria, where the interest was, of course, ransomware. And I think Madeline already mentioned how prevalent this type of cyber attacks has been for the last couple of years. These findings that were presented in that event derived mainly from the workshop we organized with RISCS on improving the UK's resilience to ransomware. That workshop was organized last December, early December, and the aim was to bring in the community together to help identify and really consolidate the breadth of existing research around ransomware from a practical, but also from a policy perspective. So our aim was to establish the latest thinking and practices around ransomware from kind of the industry perspective, but also identify research gaps or really next steps that could help inform policy making and, of course, inform how organizations can prevent and mitigate ransomware attacks. We had 33 participants in the workshop from government, academia, industry, and of course the wider community. And as you can see, the workshop findings have been published already, and you can find these as well on RISC's website. So during the workshop, we have identified specific research questions, but also specific gaps, key gaps around ransomware. And you can see here a list of wide range themes such as understanding offenders. And participants during the workshop mentioned that, of course, that a better understanding of the tactics or the motives of offenders can help prevent and improve recovery from ransomware attacks. But also a lot of discussion went around preparedness. And of course, we all know that phishing is the main vector for ransomware, but also the discussion was around specific sectors such as SMEs and the challenges they might be facing due to lower availability of expertise and resources. So they have specific challenges when it comes to taking measures to prevent such attacks. But of course, when it comes to responding to an attack, there is a limited time window between really investigating the cause of an attack and balancing kind of the undertaking of the recovery process. So many organizations don't realize really how to balance these processes, but also to ensure continuity, but also there's a lack of understanding of the potential impact that such an attack can have in taking down critical systems and kind of disrupting the business mainly. Currently, we see current underreporting, and that limits, of course, our ability to analyze and investigate the scale of these attacks and the implications of ransomware attacks. And of course, ransomware victims may not feel the incentives to report attacks. And I will actually talk a little bit about that later on. And of course, lack of reporting means lack of data and lack of understanding of the true implications when it comes to the financial and the social impact of ransomware attacks. In relation to the workshop, prior to the workshop, during October, December, we ran a survey actually to collect information and identify current practices and understanding of organizations around ransomware. So that was kind of a complementary work, which kind of received participation from 28 mainly small and medium enterprises. And some of the findings were interesting because we identified that the biggest challenge remains the human factor, users and people, employees, but also the main measures taken to prevent ransomware attacks were backups, backing up data, but also training of employees. And in the next slide, you can actually see some information around and some findings around reporting a ransomware attack to the police and how, for example, being extremely confident on the measures taken to prevent ransomware attacks. And that confidence was mainly coming out of the fact that those that would respond to a ransomware attack were mainly the IT or the SOC. Would actually lead to not reporting to the police. So actually these two variables correlated with not agreeing to report to the police. And actually I have to mention that the majority of the participants, half of the participants answered that they would completely agree when it comes to reporting a ransomware attack. So there is a clear gap there. And basically we see how confidence relates, for example, to not reporting. And again, that link to lack of data is crucial there. So overall, and as I said, the results of the workshop you can actually read in more detail in the report published on the RISCS website. But overall, the kind of main area of focus identified during the workshop was around the organizational factors and decision-making processes within organizations, which can impact the preparedness and response to an attack, but also the focus around the human factor and how that relates to for example, not being resilient to ransomware. And I mentioned already the importance of data, identifying data collection and sharing methods for all sectors is important to really answer some of the research questions identified. In the next slide, I would like also to mention some relevant work. Anna already kind of mentioned that, and it actually definitely will contribute to answering some of the research questions identified during my fellowship. That project is focusing on the role of cyber insurance and ransomware, and it is funded by the NCSC and RISCS, and it's a multidisciplinary research project between RUSI, the University of Kent, the Montfort University and Oxford Brookes University. And as I said, it focuses on the role of cyber insurance in handling the challenges posed by ransomware, and also the impact of how governments, law enforcement, or even the insurance industry can work together to tackle ransomware. And the findings, of course, will help decision makers to navigate cyber risk management approaches, understand ransomware challenges, but also provide practical recommendations. So keep an eye for the results of this project, which will be coming out later this year. And before I conclude in the next slide, I would like to also thank a number of experts who contributed and offered insights or provided invaluable support during my fellowship. And of course, NCSC, I was working very closely with Dylan. So Dylan, thank you so much for the connections, the support throughout these 2 years. And of course, Home Office, DCMS, industry, and I've had a lot of support from the RISCS Advisory Board. A lot of connections were made for experts participating also in the workshop, but also participated in the survey and provided their insights. And of course, a large number of academics who contributed to this work, and of course law enforcement, the National Crime Agency, the Eastern Region Cyber Resilience Center, and the Police Digital Security Center. And finally, just a reminder, you can find the results of my fellowship on RISC's website, but also get in touch if you're interested to work with me in some of the themes I mentioned in trying to answer some of these research questions identified during my fellowship. Thank you very much.